Hi and welcome. My name is Pam Barrett. This recorded presentation will be looking at a curriculum issue in change and be looking at an instructional reading approach that is very current in our 21st century education. Throughout history, several developmental theories have informed reading instructions in schools. Lev Vygotsky, Jean Piaget, and Mona Montessori are amongst the theorists who studied the connections between literacy development from birth. However, there are many more. As a result of these theorists' literacy development views, they believe that children learn to read through socially interacting with their environment. Vygotsky's theory has been implemented throughout the world in many school environments. Still today, these theorists' perspectives heavily influence early childhood education and care settings. Over the years, the reading methodology has changed several times. These methodologies' reading instructions are well known as a whole word recognition, whole language based, a balanced literacy approach, and now we are shifting into a structured methodology. This recent research into what is widely known as the reading wars found that many teaching approaches that are used in Australian schools still today do not understand the purpose of evidence-based research. The research also stated that teachers do not have a comprehensible understanding of why, how, what, and when a particular reading strategy should be used. I guess you could say they have become out of date. As a result of these out-of-date methodologies, it is estimated that 1 million children are at risk of not learning how to read proficiently. As a consequence of this transition from one reading instructional method to another, it will take time for schools and teachers to comprehend the change of the revised Australian curriculum and assemble the resources they need to effectively and efficiently teach children how to read in our 21st century. When the inquiry into reading took place, researchers found that the human brain actually does not learn how to read naturally. In fact, reading starts with visual input. It then enters what is known as the letterbox region, or the visual word formation area. The letterbox then connects shapes to sounds. With practice, the brain forms a new direct route from the letterbox to an area assessing meaning, known as the vertical area. Our brains process sounds and meaning in parallel. The brain forms connections of fiber channels between letters and sounds, resulting in physical chain of the brain. Finally, systematic teaching graphemes to phonemes corresponds, making the fastest change in the brain. Meanwhile, Holly Scarborough, a scientific literacy researcher, created this infographic to help explain the complex process of how children's brains learn to read. This infographic is known as Scarborough's reading rope. These two strands are vitally important for teachers to understand to enable them to plan and deliver high-quality reading instructions. On the other hand, some children struggle with language-based disabilities or have specific learning needs. One type of language-based disability is dyslexia. Dyslexic children face all sorts of problems associated with reading and writing. Unfortunately, children who are diagnosed with dyslexia often face discrimination. This discrimination is due to a misunderstanding of how dyslexic impacts children's learning. However, evidence has proven that a child with dyslexia can learn how to read at the same rate as their peers, if not better. However, research has shown that dyslexic children need to be taught through an evidence-based method, which consists of a multisensory, systematic, cumulative method. Therefore, the science of reading research demonstrates that a structured literacy method will improve dyslexic children's reading and writing. While there are also students who have English as an additional language, this means it does not come naturally to them. Therefore, as mentioned regarding the dyslexic method, teaching reading and writing to EALD children is similar. Both dyslexic and EALD children need explicit teaching of the English language in order to comprehend. EALD children often struggle with reading comprehension. Both children who may have dyslexic or is an EALD learner often struggle with cognitive overload. And due to the systematic approach that the structured literacy method consists of, reduces the student's cognitive load. Further to their studies, they revealed that there are 6 key components to successfully begin reading. These components are known as the Big Six and include oral language, phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. All of these components can be broken down further to enable a deeper understanding of how these elements influence the development process in learning how to read. This Venn diagram compares the similarities and differences between the 2 current reading methodologies that you will see in Australian classrooms. Here in the Northern Territory, the Department of Education is allowing schools and teachers to phase in the structured literacy approach into their classrooms, as this will be required further professional development for both the school and teachers, along with sourcing new resources. As of 2024, schools will be required to implement this new change, although different jurisdictions across Australia are different. From scientific evidence-based research, adjustments have been made to revise Australian curriculum. The areas of change include oral language, which consists of listening and speaking. To address the methodology change, we are now required to implement a systematic synthetic phonics approach. This will require resources that support this method. The Australian curriculum have moved away from teaching reading through a predictable text to a decodable text. This will mean schools and teachers will need to resource new equipment and materials to support their teaching of reading through a structured synthetic approach. The recommendations for this curriculum change and the shift in the methodology in teaching reading and writing is to plan and develop literacy blocks to enable effective teaching for explicit instructions that incorporated in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. The Australian curriculum recommends 2 hours per day of literacy explicit instructions. These instructions must be systematic, explicit, scaffolded, and also incorporate differentiated learning. These lessons will run between 30 to 40 minutes. And the teacher will be teaching through the explicit, synthetic, and cumulative approach. The children will be looking at segmenting sounds, blending sounds. They'll be looking at the relationships between sound or letters and sounds, blending and using decodable readers, dictation, which will address spelling, vocabulary and comprehension. We'll be looking at a whole class explicit instructions on pre-reading strategies, during reading strategies, and post-reading strategies. These comprehension strategies will be further broken down to be more specific. There will also be small group work that will be for students who need maybe further explicit instructions, like your ELAD students or the dyslexic students, and that'll be intensive intervention. So the shift in this reading methodology is looking at a synthetic phonics approach. We are shifting away from recognizing or memorizing sight words, and we are to decode words. Students will be able to identify words automatically. However, they will initially have to decode them, and when they shift that blending into recognizing and memorizing, it will be eventually a sight word for them. And it's also another great thing to have in your classroom is to have a rich literature based, a lot of variations of text in the classroom. Also, the shift is moving from your PM readers, your predictable text, to decodable text, like your Aussie decodable readers, those kind of things.